how much damage has been inflicted on Indo-US relations? For instance, has trust been eroded? Has the belief that the US will support India's rise been undermined?
Well, the answer to both those questions is yes. Indo-US relations, which had reached a level of certain, stability, optimism, substance over the last 25 years, incrementally, it had moved up, no matter who was in power in either country. Has been damaged because this is not a one-off short of one statement about tariffs. It has been a consistent negative approach now for 7, 8, 9 months. That, I'm afraid, that trust has been broken, that skepticism is back, and perhaps rightly so.
Does it ever worry you that Trump may have changed the very character of India-US relations? This is not just an adverse moment or an adverse patch, but the very nature and character of that relationship has been altered by Trump, possibly irreversibly, to the point where we don't know how his successors, whoever his successors may be, whether it's J.D. Vance, another Republican, or a Democrat, we just don't know how they'll handle the relationship. That doubt now looms over us.
There is a doubt, but I think it will all depend upon A, as you said, who the successors are. B, how is the US relationship to China 3 years from now? And what do they think of the Indo-Pacific by then? It will also depend upon how India has grown in that period in importance, in potential, in strength. So I think we can't say what will happen 3 years later. There certainly is a question mark over all these issues. There certainly is a change in the character of the relationship because, we were going up, and today we have had a dip. There will be a change, no doubt.
The other reality we have to live with is we are not that important to Trump as we were to his predecessors. Full stop. There's no denying that.
Well, maybe we are so important that he wants to keep doing this to us.
So important that he wants to punish us. All right.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch The Interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.
Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. As we approach the end of 2025 and the first year of the Trump presidency, we ask, what is the precise state of India-US relations? How much damage has been done? Can it be rectified, or is that unlikely? And therefore, what are the prospects for a free trade agreement? And what does the future hold for H-1B visas and young Indians studying in America? Those are the key issues I shall explore today with India's former ambassador to the United States, someone who served in Washington during the first Trump presidency, Navtej Sarna. Mr. Sarna, let me start with a question that I believe many people are asking themselves. What is the state of India-US relations at the moment? Are we still in Trump's crosshairs? Or because he hasn't targeted us recently, are we going through some sort of reprieve?
Thank you, Karan. Always a pleasure to join you. I think we should sort of my view on this is that we should tell the many people who are worried about this that this is not how bilateral relationships really work. We can't be standing in a field, plucking petals off a daisy flower and saying, he loves me not, he loves me, he loves me not. It's not a daily thing. There is a certain relationship. You have to assess it on the long-term impact of President Trump on the relationship, and try to see how it's going to look. But what I want to say to your question is that, we can't say what he's thinking about which country today. And frankly, I'm not sure he knows every morning how the day is going to pan out and what he's planning to do with each country. So there is a certain amount of, we shouldn't think that we are the main person in his life, so to speak, as a country, that this is the only relationship that he's bothered about, and that he's actively thinking about this relationship on a daily basis. To sort of soften that blow, I would also say that we must also keep in perspective that we are not the only country that has been impacted by President Trump. I mean, virtually every major partner of the United States, including allies like Japan, Korea, Canada, Europe, have been deeply impacted. And so neither should we have that sense that we are the only victim, nor should we have the sense that, these things can change on a daily basis.
Let me then ask you this. We have been certainly impacted adversely, and we've been impacted in ways that we certainly are not happy with. Against that background, what do you make of Trump's phone calls to wish Modi on his birthday and then again on Diwali? How do they sit with the way we're being adversely impacted?
Well, that's Mr. Trump. And one thing he has not done, he's actually not attacked the prime minister personally. He's attacked India many times, but he's sort of stayed away from, crossing that line. So I think, the fact it doesn't that he doesn't want to deal with India or doesn't want to deal with our prime minister or doesn't want to deal with our leadership. It's simply that he is trying to change the way he and the United States, as far as he's concerned, deals with the rest of the world. And I don't think it means that he'll not talk to somebody, or he's quite capable, as we have seen in many other cases, of saying some very nasty things about people and then picking up the phone and talking to them.
Let's then, at this point, try and assess the impact on India. How much damage has been inflicted on Indo-US relations? For instance, has trust been eroded? Has the belief that the US will support India's rise been undermined?
Well, the answer to both those questions is yes. Indo-US relations, which had reached a level of certain, stability, optimism, substance over the last 25 years, incrementally, it had moved up, no matter who was in power in either country, has been damaged because this is not a one-off short of one statement about tariffs. It has been a consistent negative approach now for 7, 8, 9 months. So the trust, which was always fragile in India about the United States, we have a history of skepticism about the United States throughout the Cold War years, which was also based on certain reasons, and which has been sort of kept away, put into abeyance over this last quarter century. But that, I'm afraid, that trust has been broken, that skepticism is back, and perhaps rightly so.
What about the bonds that bind India and America together? One of the strongest was the belief that America would support India against an increasingly belligerent, if not tough, China. Has that bond been thrown into question as well?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a big question mark looming over that presumption, which had almost become a truism since the times of George W. Bush and Condi Rice, etc., that for its own reasons, the United States will help propel the regional rise of India as well as the global rise of India, because they saw us as a country with which they had a convergence, particularly on China. And over the same years, a kind of nationwide consensus developed in the United States on China, which actually came to its peak, ironically, in Trump's first term. And he became very tough on China. And then Biden sort of continued that approach to China, despite skepticism in the early Biden months that he would suddenly soften towards China and then what would happen to us. But that continued. But today, I think that landscape, that strategic presumption that India and US will always be on the same side vis-a-vis China, which was particularly comforting to us after 2020 and Galwan, which also explains why we became stronger and more high profile in the Quad. That presumption is certainly under question today, particularly after Trump's latest sort of warming up or defreezing of Xi in Busan.
Particularly after he talked about G2.
Particularly after he talked about G2, though that might, in my view, just be at the moment a rhetorical flourish, because, a G2, and China doesn't seem to be very keen on being, told to handle half of the world's problems. They have got ambitions of their own. And I don't think G2, in a classical sense in which that concept started about 15, 18 years ago, is what Trump means. But yes, two big powers, possibly two zones of influence, possibly sort of, working out things between themselves and let the smaller guys sort of scatter around and look after themselves. Yes, all that is disturbing and should be, and we should stop thinking that on China, Trump will be consistent. He's not going to be consistent. Is likely to meet Xi possibly, as I read somewhere, possibly 4 times during the next 1 year.
On the one hand, the relationship with India has suffered. Trust is diminished. The belief that America will support India vis-a-vis China has been thrown into question. But on the other hand, how do you read Trump's recent embrace of Pakistan and Field Marshal Asim Munir in particular? Is that done to taunt India, or does it represent a more fundamental change in America's attitude to the subcontinent and to the Asian region?
Well, I don't think it's apart from that. I think it's a continuation of the same concepts that we have been talking about so far, that one of the things that has disturbed US-India relations is this warming up of Pakistan, and this rather sudden and rather provocative warming up by, lunches in the White House and all that, particularly a uniformed field marshal, a self-proclaimed field marshal. My view on this is that I don't think in Trump's mind, I don't think it's some great policy plan to this. Possibly his administration, if it sort of gets their hands together, may bring out a policy underpinning to it, because Pakistan has been a traditional partner of the United States in South Asia, in Afghanistan, and therefore we should not be so surprised that they've sort of gone back to mending that relationship to some extent. I don't think yet that we should worry that it has become a hyphenation, because India has moved on much, and perhaps in pure perceptional terms, as two nuclear powers, at that sort of simplistic level, there is a hyphenation. But again, I think what mattered most was the personal things. The Pakistani sort of from what one reads in reports, sort of found ways to get into his, family connection, or get into Steve Witkoff's family connection or business connections, and dangle these things about rare earths and crypto, and plus, of course, the recommendation letter for the Nobel Peace Prize. So, I mean, we know this, Trump is very susceptible to all these things. And the Pakistanis, would hold on to any particular method of, getting there. And they have done it.
Let me come, Mr. Sarna, to another aspect of the troubled India-US relationship. I think I'm right in saying India is the only country against whom Trump has imposed 25% tariffs for buying Russian oil. That hasn't happened to China, it hasn't happened to Turkey, to Hungary, to Slovakia. And when it happens to India, it feels almost like punishment. But the question is, punishment for what?
I think this, we have wasted a lot of ink, a lot of thought on why this happened. And really, I don't think there's one simple answer. But you are right that it does sort of sound spiteful to do it to India on this 25% extra, because, again, Biden's administration, we are told, actually encouraged us to buy Russian oil. B, China is buying more Russian oil, and he doesn't seem to be worried about that when he meets President Xi. And C, Russian oil purchases have also been going down drastically for reasons of sanctions and discounts and so on. So I don't think it's about Russia. I think it is some sort of methodology, either on the Nobel Prize letter or recommendation, and B, on the claims of claiming credit on ending the war between India and Pakistan in May, and and C, possibly to put so much pressure on India that they give a trade deal which meets all his demands on that. So it could be any or all of these.
But in fact, the action against India is now moving away from government to government and looking very much if it's an attempt to target the people-to-people area. For instance, India is, or rather Indian people are, the principal target of Trump sharply increasing H-1B visa fees. And certainly Indian students, who are the largest cohort of foreign students in America, are the primary target when he's seeking to curtail and limit student visas. Side by side, however, he's also talking about increasing Chinese students to 600,000, which feels almost as if he's rubbing it into the Indians. Is he not in danger of damaging that critical, vital people-to-people relationship? He's already damaged the government-to-government one.
And you think he cares? I don't think he's bothered. I think one of the big things on his policy, or whatever goes for policy of him and the MAGA people, is anti-immigrant. And the H-1B visa, which has also not been without its problems in the past. Let's remember, it's not some sort of golden method where everybody behaves properly. There are firms who have misused the H-1B visa. There has been always a counter thought on the H-1B visa policy in the United States, much even as the H-1B workers or professionals have actually helped United States companies, possibly more than they've helped Indian companies. But yes, the whole anti-immigrant thing was one of the things which works on H-1B visa. And it just happens that 70% of the H-1B visas go to India. So it does damage our people-to-people relations. Student visas for Indians have become harder. But let's remember, not just in the US, even in the UK. Even the work extension given to students in the UK has been cut down from, I believe, from 2 years to 1.5 years. So there is a drop of Indian students going to the West. And what happens? Let's see what happens if the Indian students really are needed because they're a great source of income for universities. Universities are going to begin to slowly open offices, open campuses in India.
But you know,
Australia coming.
the impression I get, Mr. Sarna, is that there's a fundamental shift in the Trump administration's attitude to India that underlies his treatment of the country. It is no longer an important country. It doesn't matter.
Well, we have to see how much we matter, because there's a certain amount that we will continue to matter. But that sort of optimism in which this relationship had got enveloped, that sort of positive, unquestionable narrative that India and US relationship is only going up and up and up. I agree with you entirely. That is no longer true. So there is a feeling that it's time that we stopped living on the hope of a silver bullet. That the hope that the trade deal, if it comes, everything will go back to normal. No, it won't.
Let's
And
pick up on the trade deal thought.
sure.
Against the background of what we've been discussing, and the fact that the optimism, as you called it, no longer holds, the fact that the positive narrative that used to sketch the India-America relationship is no longer true. Against that background, do you see a trade deal happening at all? Or is it looking increasingly uncertain, perhaps even unlikely?
I can't say. I can't say because again, I have no privileged information, but what one hears is that a trade deal has been ready for signatures for a while now. And the negotiations are more or less, in place and have been done. And that's why you have optimistic sounds saying, oh, by fall we'll have it, by winter we'll have it. But
The
I think
truth, Mr. Sarna, if this has been correctly reported to me, is that on two occasions the deal was done. It went to Trump for his acceptance and he turned it down.
so there is no way of saying when he will say, okay, now I've got all the ducks in a row and I can sign with India. He probably wants not just a deal, which is a fair deal, an honest deal, a balanced deal. He wants every deal as a victory. Look, I put these guys in their place. I brought them to their knees. I got this, 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 this. He needs to pronounce every step that he takes as a victory. And maybe the deal is not victory enough.
In other words, Trump sees India as a target he needs to bullseye hit.
Quite possibly. Because we have responded in ways in which many of the allies have not responded. We haven't really gone down on bended knee.
And he resents that.
Well, he likes everybody to go down on bended knee. You've seen pictures of how the Europeans were sitting around the Roosevelt, the Resolute desk in the Oval Office, and everybody was sort of sitting like in a circle around him, talking to him. You've seen how the big tech boys sat in the cabinet room and each one of them offered billions. You've seen how he went recently to the ASEAN countries and to Southeast Asia, and everybody was tripping over themselves to invest 600 billion and 500 billion and so on. When they will invest this, I have no idea. So, India has actually responded with a fair amount of dignified restraint. And we've just tried to keep the pieces in play wherever we can. But we must know that we have just kept the pieces in play, that these are not silver bullets, as I said.
As you say, India has responded with dignified restraint, and that is certainly a compliment to the Modi government's handling of this crisis with America. But the truth is, India doesn't matter to Trump as much as it did to his predecessors. And because India is not playing the game as he'd like it to be played, he's determined to get his revenge on us.
Well, the world is changing. And if Trump is a reality, and it's not just Trump, United States itself is in a political churn. I mean, they are having huge problems within the United States. So we don't have any idea of who are going to be his successors, what is going to be the policy of his successors on anything. And I think we have to now get real about the fact that the world that we have known, in which there were certain norms, in which there were certain underpinning institutions, and all that is not likely to return.
Tell me
So I
this.
think
One frequently reads in the papers that India's negotiators, sometimes they're named, sometimes they're not named, are still hopeful on the reciprocal tariff front that Trump has imposed can be reduced from 25% to somewhere between 15 and 19%, so that we are either on par with countries like Pakistan, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, or even slightly better off than them. Do you really share that optimism? Because that frequently appears in the pink papers. To me, it seems unrealistic. How does it feel to you?
I think to me it is attached to as much optimism as you can apply to the trade deal. If you get a trade deal and he signs it, and thereafter, I mean, it will be presumed that a certain reduction of tariffs will have been inbuilt into the trade deal. So I think that will come with the trade deal. So, and it won't be something which is suddenly unexpected, because he won't sign on to the trade deal until you have got the, we won't even sign on until you have got a certain reduction in the tariff. So I think the two things are related.
Tell me, how do you see India US relations during the remaining 3 years of the Trump presidency? What are the chances they could improve? What are the chances they'll continue much as they have been for the last 1 year? And what are the chances that we just don't know?
Well, I think the fact that they could improve, not fully, but they could improve on certain aspects. You could actually, if Trump gets a trade deal that he likes, he may actually decide that he may want to come for a Quad summit if he still believes in the Quad, which is doubtful. So I think all this is linked essentially to what has brought us here, which is Trump's unpredictability. He could go either way. But again, as I say, we cannot wait with bated breath. We have to get on with things. We can't just wait with bated breath that, oh, we hope next month he'll feel better about us.
We can't wait with bated breath. But on the other hand, America, in trade terms, in political terms, in support against China, is a critical friend, if not support. And that has now been thrown into question. So, this bated breath is actually essential for our goodwill and our survival.
Well, then we have to work on it. We have to continue to work on it, which is why we have signed the 10-year defense deal, which is why our trade negotiators are trying to do what they are, which is why we remain engaged in the Quad process. So I think we are trying to keep all the pieces in play. But all this reaches a point where a certain amount of unpredictability has come into the global system and into the geopolitics.
Tell me, does it ever worry you that Trump may have changed the very character of India US relations? This is not just an adverse moment or an adverse patch, but the very nature and character of that relationship has been altered by Trump, possibly irreversibly, to the point where we don't know how his successors, whoever his successors may be, whether it's J.D. Vance, another Republican, or a Democrat, we just don't know how they'd handle the relationship. That doubt now looms over us.
There is a doubt, but I think it will all depend upon A, as you said, who the successors are. B, how is the US relationship to China 3 years from now? And what do they think of the Indo-Pacific by then? It will also depend upon how India has grown in that period in importance, in potential, in strength. So I think we can't say what will happen 3 years later. There certainly is a question mark over all these issues. There certainly is a change in the character of the relationship because, we were going up, and today we have had a dip. We will have to see how much it's not always just one man. I mean, Trump is one man, but his successor may be not that kind of a man. There are also systems. There is the entire economic engagement. There is the corporate sector, which remains fairly bullish, I understand, on India. There is the technology linkages, which can be revived. So it will depend on a lot of factors as to where the needle finally stops on this. But there will be a change, no doubt.
Finally, let me put to you a question that many in the audience will be asking themselves. President Putin of Russia arrives tomorrow, and the question people will ask is the relationship with Russia more important for India than the relationship with America today under Trump?
Well, I think the relationship with Russia has always been important. Today, because of what has happened in India-US relations, there is a closer look at the India-Russia relationship. There's a closer analysis, I'm sure, and a desire for a deeper engagement or widening the engagement beyond defense and nuclear energy and oil. So we have to certainly look at each of these relationships on their own, but naturally what happens in another relationship is going to impact them. That's the whole idea of living in a conflicted world, in a fractured world, in which geopolitical rivalries are going to be a reality.
But the other reality we have to live with is we are not that important to Trump as we were to his predecessors. Full stop. There's no denying that.
Well, maybe we are so important that he wants to keep doing this to us.
So important that he wants to punish us. All right. That tongue-in-cheek remark sums up the interview. I'm deeply grateful to Mr. Sarna for the time you've given me and for sharing your analysis of where India-US relations stand at the moment. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.